Russia holds more than 2,000 tons of sovereign gold. That makes it the fifth largest stockpile on the planet. This hoard is the result of a deliberate, decade-long strategy. Following the 2014 annexation of Crimea and the initial wave of Western sanctions, the government set out to de-dollarize the economy and build a financial shield that outside forces couldn't touch. In standard practice, these reserves sit idle. Transactions between the finance ministry and the central bank are typically notional ledger updates, paper transfers where the physical metal never leaves the vault. For 10 years, this stockpile was treated as a geopolitical defense mechanism. It was meant to protect the state from international isolation, not to function as a source of cash for routine government expenses. But in early 2026, the Bank of Russia began to move. This bar chart tracks Russian gold sales over time. Notice the spike right here at the start of 2026. In just January and February, the central bank unloaded 500,000 ounces of gold, roughly 14 metric tons of bullion. The central bank has transitioned from ledger-based adjustments to the physical movement of bullion, offloading actual bars for the first time in 25 years. Why would a heavily sanctioned nation start pawning off its most vital financial defense mechanism? Moving physical gold indicates that the state's focus has shifted from long-term macroeconomic planning to an immediate, desperate need for liquid cash. Now entering the fourth year of the conflict in Ukraine, sustained heavy military spending has opened a massive gap in the national budget. This line graph tracks budget expectations versus reality. The government initially projected a 2025 deficit of 0.5%. Instead, they ended the year at 2.6%. With deferred December payments, economists suggest the actual deficit is 3.4%. Historically, Russia would plug that hole with fossil fuel revenue. But their first and most crucial economic buffer is failing. Plunging global oil prices in the second half of 2025, combined with tighter U.S. sanctions, severely compressed profit margins. Oil and gas tax revenues have now fallen to roughly 20% of total state revenue, half of what they were before the conflict began. The primary engine of the Russian war economy can no longer generate enough capital to cover the costs of the battlefield. To find the cash, the government turned to its second financial buffer, the domestic economy. They began aggressively issuing domestic OFC bonds, effectively borrowing from their own internal market. They also squeezed the citizens. A 2 percentage point hike in the value-added tax means that everyday consumer taxes now make up 40% of all government revenues. Next, they tapped the National Welfare Fund. This emergency reserve has been drawn down to about 4 trillion rubles, which is barely enough to cover the immediate projected deficit for the current year. The scale of this cash burn is staggering. Between 2022 and 2025, the state liquidated over 15 trillion rubles in combined gold and foreign currency to keep the government functioning. With energy cash flows compressed and rainy day funds evaporating, the state has hit the bottom of its financial funnel. Liquidating these buffers has left a visible mark. Russia's physical gold reserves have now dropped to 74.3 million ounces, their lowest level in 4 years. If we map this on a dual-axis chart, you can see a strange dynamic. The total volume of physical gold is dropping, but the market price of gold is surging, recently crossing $5,000 an ounce. Because the price is so high, their remaining physical stockpile is still valued at $384 billion. On paper, this pushes Russia's total international reserves to over $809 billion. But there is a catch. $300 billion of those total reserves are completely frozen by Western sanctions. The state can count that wealth on a spreadsheet, but they cannot spend it. Russia is not on the verge of an overnight collapse. Their external debt sits at roughly 14% of GDP, which is among the lowest levels in the world. However, the transition from notional accounting to the physical liquidation of gold bars reveals the actual pressure on the budget. After a decade of accumulating a financial shield, the state has begun selling it off to fund the conflict.